Okay, so it's time to get into the good stuff. Today we're gonna be going over exactly what I've saved, invested, and what my total debt is at 28 years old. Now, I think it's really important to note that you can't really believe everything that you see online, especially given the fact that we all show up differently, even depending on the platform. Now, it's funny because I'm the one who's constantly asking Steph, where is the money? Pretty much anytime I see anyone on social media doing what looks like to me like they're spending a lot of money. Also, me and Steph are recently out at dinner with a few friends a couple weeks ago when this person that we were having dinner with mentioned how they know this one person, so let's say like a friend of a friend, how they know this person and that they must be making a lot of money because they shop a lot and because they drive an expensive car. Now, with me being me at the dinner table, my first thought was, well, we definitely don't know that based on their spending. I mean, they could literally be spending a whole bunch of money and driving this really nice car, but have $0 in their bank account. This kind of got me thinking because the more and more that I talk to my friends, the more that I realize how important it is to put yourself first. And no, I don't mean from the perspective of like, you know, you only live once and your 20s are over perspective. Right now, I could probably count on two hands the amount of friends that I know who are driving either an Audi, a BMW, a Benz, or some sort of luxury vehicle. And now, there's nothing wrong with, you know, wanting to drive a nice car. I'm actually a huge fan of nice cars, but I think it's really important to put context around our financial situations. Anyways, I used to share my net worth updates with you guys all the time back when I was paying off my student loans, which by the way, feels like forever ago. I haven't since then, I haven't shared the specific numbers since back when I had debt. So let's get into the details. So starting with investing, my investment journey has been really interesting, mainly because I feel like I've learned so much just over the last couple of years. And it's funny because as someone who went to school for accounting and even worked at a Big Four firm, I think the general assumption is that you know more than you do, or that you were likely taught all the necessary money topics. And I feel like for a lot of people, you even take on that persona because you feel like it's what you should be doing. Well, the reality is that the vast majority of the population just isn't investing, and of the people who are, a lot of them are just as lost when it comes to knowing which investment actually makes the most sense. When I started my investment journey, kind of like what I was saying before, I was under the impression that I needed to know more than what I already knew. Meaning I felt like I had to have this elaborate plan where I was literally researching all these different companies, reading financial statements, and looking for some sort of indication that a particular stock was gonna be like the best investment. But here's the thing, even though I literally used to do that for work, the reading the financial statements part at least, understanding the market is understanding that no one has a crystal ball that can tell you exactly what's going to happen in the future. Anyways, back in 2021, when literally everything in the market was growing, I ended up investing a small amount of money into some growth companies. So we're talking C3 AI and Viacom CBS in particular. Now, I'm not even gonna get into that, but just know that since then, I've gotten rid of both of them, thank God. Now, I had also picked up Aritzia and Algonquin Power, both of which I still own to this day, mainly because they're still down. Aritzia is one of those companies that I'm hoping to get rid of over the next couple months. Algonquin Power, on the other hand, is one that's realistically just gonna sit in my TFSA for like a really long time. I think I'm down like 50% on that stock. I bought it at $18 a share, and now it's trading at around $8 a share, somewhere around there, which obviously really sucks. Thankfully, I never had the opportunity to put more than like a couple $100s into each stock, but it really does go to show you where I started from like two different levels. So now fast forward 1 year later to March of 2022. At this point, this is when I stopped putting any money towards single stocks, and I started investing all of my money and putting it towards XEQT, which is an ETF. I basically learned from my experience and decided to keep things more simple. I feel like a lot of us constantly talk about how great ETFs are, but then in that same statement, you'll hear right after someone say something along the lines of, yeah, like I love ETFs, but I also like messing around in the market with single stocks. For me, I'd rather not mess around with my very real money. Plus, a lot of the time, especially being in Canada, if you're buying, US companies, you're having to pay conversion fees, if not more fees on top of that for just executing that trade. Now, XEQT was my personal choice because it's globally diversified. It's an all equity ETF, meaning that there's no fixed income or bonds, which once again, for me, given the fact that I'm young, the growth of my portfolio is just something that I think is more important than me collecting income on it. So in the form of dividends or through any of the other like fixed income products. It's obviously a little bit more expensive than funds that strictly track, let's say, just the entire US market or even the S&P 500, but I do have more diversification, and for better or for worse, there is less volatility than if you are just strictly concentrated in the US market. Again, everyone has their own personal ETF choice, but this is just the one that's working for me right now. Now, I'm also focused on maxing out my TFSA, and then from there, it'll just be maintaining whatever additional room is added every year by the government. Right now, my portfolio is sitting at just over $40,000, and I have a total contribution room limit of $75,000. Now, when it comes to savings, it was kind of weird because when I finished paying off my debt, I was naturally just like super eager and excited to just go all in on investing. Now, the only thing at the time was the fact that I didn't have any cash. And when I say I didn't have any cash, I mean I had no money like whatsoever. Now, usually that's okay if you're aggressively paying off your debt, you just don't notice it. But once you have the ability to take a step back, you tend to view things a little bit differently. So I basically had to take a step back and realize that I really needed to build up an emergency fund finally, which is exactly what I did. I racked up $10,000 into my high interest savings account. And even though it was really tough doing that, mainly because I would have rather just invested that money, I am super, super glad that I prioritized it. Basically what happened was once me and Steph decided to quit our corporate jobs and go all in on the content, that entire first year, we were paying ourselves basically just enough to cover our necessary expenses. So, we were paying ourselves $2,036 a month, which didn't leave us with any money to invest or save, let alone anything else that came up. Anyways, sometime in September of 2022, me and Steph were literally just like hanging out on the couch, eating some food, when I noticed that there was something very, very wrong in my mouth. But basically what it felt like I was missing a tooth, which as you can imagine is crazy. And I'm not even gonna get into the details of all that because we did an entire video where I covered all of that, but I had to dish out $4,000 in order to get a replacement for that tooth. And no, I'm not kidding when I say that it was $4,000. It was super painful knowing that I had to spend that kind of money, but I also felt great knowing that I knew exactly where that money was coming from and that the only person that I'd have to pay back was myself, aka my high interest savings account. Anyways, it took a few months to fill up my emergency fund again, so back up to that 10K, but it was such a crucial lesson in why having an emergency fund is so important. Now, in terms of my bank accounts, my goal for this year is to keep around $30,000 in cash. So that's including my emergency fund, ideally to be used for real estate at some point. So with that in mind, if you were to take a look at where my accounts sit right now, you'd notice that I have just over $2,000 in my Simply No Fee checking account. That way there's a little bit of money in there for any recurring bills. And then in my EQ Bank high interest savings account, there's just over $28,000 in readily available cash that's sitting there, earning a little bit of interest. And that way it's not sitting in like a regular account just wasting away. You'll notice that my total cash deposits sit at just over $30,000, with 28 of that being in actual savings. So just shy off of that 30,000 that I mentioned earlier. That's just something that I'll have to top up over the next month or so. I feel like now that we've covered the positive stuff and kind of alluded to the debt, now it's time to finally talk about the actual debt portion. So how much I've, paid off in the past and how much I have right now. So when I finished school, I graduated with a total of $50,000 in student loan debt, 45 of which was in government loans, and then 5,000 or so was in a student line of credit. And when I tell you that paying it off, so paying the entire loan off as quickly as I did was super tough, man, was it tough, but I do not regret it at all. Now, to give you guys some context, at the time, I was making around $1,400 biweekly, or let's say $2,800 a month. And according to my calculations that I was doing at the time, after paying off any of my necessary expenses, I could afford to put $1,300 a month just towards that debt. And then let's say in about 3 years, assuming no raises at work, I'd be done paying off the debt and complete. Now, in the grand scheme of life, that's a very, very short period of time. But, try telling that to someone who's actively in the process of paying off their debt. They're not gonna hear you. You're literally so deep into the weeds that you literally just can't see the end of the tunnel. You can't see the light, whatever you wanna call it. You basically just, you can't even imagine what it would feel like to be debt-free. Anyways, after about 2.5 years, I finished paying off my debt, and it literally felt like a weight was lifted off my shoulders. I say this to Steph all the time, but it kind of felt like back when I was in high school and I was working at McDonald's, where my disposable income even though I was making a small amount of money, my disposable income was really high because I was basically working without intention, right? I didn't have any responsibilities. It wasn't my responsibility to pay the rent or get food. So a lot of the time, even though I was saving some of that money, I was also spending a really good chunk of it. What's interesting now is that I've been debt-free for almost 3 years, and I definitely won't have any other debt until I have a mortgage on a property, which to me isn't really a big deal because I've been thinking about this for years and years. But it would be interesting for you guys to get Steph's take on this because she's someone who's never had any debt at all in her life. And apart from us talking about money on the channel and actually sharing a lot of this stuff with you guys, this is something that she had never really thought about or talked about before. The way that I look at debt now is strictly from a mathematical standpoint. So if we're talking about real estate, so buying and using borrowed money to make that happen, the only question to me that really matters is, does the math make sense? There's definitely good debt and bad debt, and I think people often confuse the two, but I think if we've learned anything from history, it's that wealth has been created and has been passed down through real estate. It's why a lot of, I won't say a lot, but some of your friends that you might know have been able to buy properties, whether it be a house or even a condo, with the help from their parents. So this could have been through actual direct help with them getting like a cash gift, or indirectly from their parents being able to leverage their primary residence in order to help out their kid. Either way, as it stands, for me, as of right now, I have $0 in debt, but we'll revisit that sometime over the next couple of years and see if anything changes. Now, if we take a look back and compare my journey year over year, at age 22, when I finally graduated university, I had $0 invested, $0 saved, but $50,000 in student loan debt. Now at age 25, when I finished paying off my debt, I again had $0 invested, $320.83 saved, and again, $0 in debt. At age 28, so right now, and 3 years after paying off my debt, and 2.5 years into my self-employed journey, I have just over $40,000 invested and just over $30,000 saved and $0 in debt. That's a $120,000 swing in my net worth over the last 6 years. And again, over that time, I've also been able to build a business that I'm working on growing and ultimately just being content with where I am and where my journey has ultimately taken me up until this point. I think for me, I'm just really proud of myself and what I've been able to accomplish in such a short period of time. I think when you're young, you don't really take in how time flies by like super quickly. So that's why I think it's also really important to stay grounded when you're looking to make each day, each month, and each year better than the last one. Right now, I think given where we are within like the social media landscape, I think it's really easy to look at people who are just anomalies and compare yourselves to them. But honestly, that's just not the reality. The reality is that regular people are out here doing, working regular jobs and doing whatever they can to try and make things happen. And I'm just proud that me and Steph have been able to build a community around us of people who are down to take that initial step and ultimately be on this journey along with us. With that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. And if you have any thoughts, let us know down in the comments. And yeah, we'll see you next week with another video.